In today's programme, I discovered an old pair of headphones which, to my surprise, worked. And then I decided what the best thing to do was to give them an artistic makeover and make them look technologically advanced. I don't know in what direction, whether it's steampunk or other punk. I don't know, I hope it'll look cool, we shall see. Anyway, enough beating around the bush, let us begin. My first priority on these headphones was to get them in a state where I'd be comfortable beating them up and making them look fancy. There's no point in me making something look fancy if I have that sneaking suspicion it's going to fall apart when I casually look at it. I achieved this with a combination of aluminium wire, propping it open with a bit of wood, and a fair amount of hot glue. My second priority was to go and make sure that these actually fit on my ears. Due to how they were damaged, they didn't fit particularly snugly round them. To my surprise, the easiest solution to this, though I tried many, was to use a rubber band. Crude as the solution may be, it proved to be the most effective. With the boring necessities out the way, it was time to move on to the fun bit. Using a selection of old Warhammer sprues, I hot glued them to the headphones and built up the form I was hoping to achieve. I wasn't really sure what effect I was going for at the time. All I knew is I didn't want it to be as curvy as the original form that the headphones had. I didn't know where I was going at this point, but I knew on some level that I was on the right track. Things were going well for me. It was now time to flesh out the headphones, using my second favourite sculpting material, milliput. I used this to bulk up and change the shape of the headphones. The results, in my opinion, created a weird wibbly-wobbly effect. The style I've been creating has emerged organically, rather literally, in the sense of how I was draping the milliput over the sprue frame produced an interesting result. Entirely organic, purely to the fact I was too lazy to flesh out the whole thing, because that would seem like too much hard work. After that was done, it was time to add weird wiry bits with my favourite sculpting material, green stuff. The main advantages it has over milliput is how flexible it can go, meaning it's ideal for wire creation or other fine details. The process for using the green stuff was fairly straightforward. Once the yellow and blue stuff had been mixed together till it was bright green, I rolled them out into sausages and poked them into any hole or crevice I felt was appropriate to have wires in. This was done to the point of artistic satisfaction. If there is one thing you can conclude from this artistic style, is that whoever made this was lazy, purely due to the fact that they have all these exposed wires. I mean, if you look at our modern computers, sure, they're exposed wires, but they're kind of there for a reason, but on the outside the actual electronics do that, that's just sacrilege in our design terms. Meaning, whatever tech this is evidently rather cobbled together. The green stuff wires made, I realised I had a problem. I had initially intended to wrap up all the top bits with milliput and sculpt it out continuing the style, but I was running dangerously low on milliput and green stuff, and there's no point in me going up and over there if I was going to run out partway through. The solution I came up with was fairly straightforward. I would source some rags and then, fairly straightforwardly, wrap them around and then glue them in place. However, I should probably do that later. If I'm going to paint all this, I do not want to get stuff covered in paint, so I had to change priorities and spray paint the work I had already done. The thing about that is that as these were still a working pair of headphones, I needed to actively avoid getting any paint in the electronics, which was admittedly a bit of a hassle, but I managed in the end, although my hands ended up being horribly covered in paint, which was indeed a pain to scrub off. The spray I used, the spray version of Lead Belcher from the Citadel line, did an okay job, but I still needed to touch up the areas that I'd missed, or were too close to the electronics, and were a bit of a risk to get with the old spray can. I did this with Abaddon Black, and Lead Belcher, the base coat version. I then painted the wires using Warp Lightning. The results were okay, but I wasn't quite sure about where the paint was going, so I decided to move on and execute my plan for the wrapping around the headband. That, also, I was not quite sure on how it was looking. The white was too dry and it just didn't quite work for me. Unfortunately, I had run out of time for the day, I needed to pack up, and it was now time to work on the problem another day. Today, my goal was simple. make everything look nice. And that I decided, in my infinite wisdom, to go and achieve using a time-lapse. And let's roll that. During this time, I did a number of things. The first thing I did was make a random patch of one side look suspiciously like a cassette tape, or something to that effect. I also made where all the buttons were look sort of like a circuit board, and only sort of, and a bunch of other details I won't mention. Oh, I also made everything a bit of a weird, scuddly metal, like, darker, more bronzish, like they've been chipping and wearing. And using my favourite liquid grime, Agrex Earthshade, I messed up and fiddled about and made the top look properly dirty and grimy as I'd initially envisioned it. All that looked kind of nice, and voila, we now have a finished pair of fancy looking headphone thingies. And now, behold, the Something Punk headphones. Here we have some front and back view, as well as some side-on close-up views of the left and right ear cups. Oh, and I almost forgot, the buttons for the headphones as well. Well, that does it for me. See you next time.